New this morning across the state, two men were arrested after state police found illegal guns on them. On Saturday night, a state trooper noticed a man using a cell phone while driving and pulled that car over. When the officer approached the car, he smelled marijuana and noticed the handle of a pistol in the pocket of one of the passengers. That passenger, 20-year-old Dimitri Felipe of Malden, is not licensed to carry. The state trooper then called in for backup, and when that backup arrived, they removed the other passengers and found a gun in the waistband of 23-year-old Eddie Rojas of Lynn, who was also not licensed to carry. During a search of their car, officers located 6 ounces of suspected marijuana. The two men were taken into custody.